G'day viewers, this is Alex from the NIA support team. This video is on how to update your iAiming using an Apple device on a cellular network. We've made this video to hopefully better explain the process and simplify it for our viewers. The process is risk-free and will bring the latest features and improvements to your device. Before we get started, there's a few things you'll need to do. First of all, you'll want to back up all your trigger footage off the iAiming scope and then ensure you have fully charged it. You'll then want to download the latest iAiming app on your relevant device and ensure that you have a good mobile network signal. First up, you will need to get your iAiming's Wi-Fi details. To do this, grab your scope and go into the menu using the dial. Scrolling through the menu, you will see a Wi-Fi icon. Select this and turn it to on. Once it is selected to on, tap the button again and you will have now turned your scope's Wi-Fi on. You can then get out of the menu by holding the button down for a second. You will then need to clarify the scope's Wi-Fi password. To do this, go back into the menu, scroll down to the second page, click the setting icon, and then you will see an option shown that will show your scope's Wi-Fi password. In this case, my password is the default, which is 87654321. If you select this, you can go through and change these numbers if you have a preferred password. Once completed, hold the button for a second to get out of the menu, and you'll have to do this again to get out of the second menu. Now that you have the Wi-Fi information from your iAiming, it's time to connect it to your device. So to do this, we'll need to go into the settings, which in this case is here, and go into our Wi-Fi. Once you're in your Wi-Fi, you should be able to find your scope in the list. In this case, I have an iAiming 317, and I'll select it here. Now you need to put the password we got for your device before in. In this case, this one has the default, which is 87654321. And then click join. We can now see that the iAiming is connected. It reports no internet connection. That's because we're connecting to the iAiming simply to update it and communicate with it. It does not provide internet to the phone. We now go back to our main screen and we'll open the iAiming app. This app operates in landscape, so we will need to rotate the phone, and we'll leave it this way for the rest of the video, but you will find that your settings have to be rotated back to portrait. So in this case, we can see our iAiming here and it says it's connected. So we're going to click that and go ahead. If for any reason you don't see your iAiming there, you can try pressing the refresh and connect buttons. If it still does not appear, go back to your Wi-Fi settings and just confirm you're connected to the scope. So now that we're here in our scope, we can have a look at the model number, serial number, and the various software versions. So we can see a hardware version, a software version, and FPGA and ARM version. These two versions below are related to components within the scope, and at the current we have no version listed there. This should change once we update it. So we're going to go ahead and go with firmware update. And now we have an option to pick which firmware we'd like to check for an update on. So in this case, we want to update the soft ultimately, which is what will give us the most notable features and improvements to the scope, but it's always a good idea to update our FPGA and ARM firmware first. These basically update components within the scope, so it's always important to have those up to date prior to updating the soft. We're going to go ahead and update the FPGA firmware. So now it's telling us to disconnect the device from Wi-Fi, and we can check for the latest version. So now we have to disconnect from our iAiming so our phone has internet access once again. So to do this, we're just going to go back to that main screen, back into the settings, and we can just turn the Wi-Fi off by hitting this little toggle here. Now that the Wi-Fi is off, the mobile phone will use the cellular network, and we can just go straight back to the main screen, back into our iAiming app, and hit check latest version. Now we can see in this case there is a new firmware version available, so we're going to go ahead and download that. while this is downloading, we'll also take our scope and zoom in the scroll wheel. We generally zoom this straight to the maximum zoom. The reason we do this is it helps updates work. Sometimes they'll time out if the scope is not set to its maximum zoom setting. So it's always a good idea to set it before you apply the update. If you forget, you may find the update hangs and your scope will just sit and the update will not complete. If this happens, it should not damage your scope, but you will have to turn it off and restart the update process. So now that the update is downloaded, we need to connect back to the scope. So to do this in our case, we can just go straight back to the main screen, back into our settings, and turn the Wi-Fi back on. Now in this case, we can see it's connected straight back to our scope. This may not be the case for you, and if so, just find the scope back down in the list below. We'll now go back to the home screen and back into the iAiming app and send the update through. When we're performing an update, you will see information on the scope, but the best place to look, as it's more consistent, is on your device. So it will tell you when the update's complete, and once that's occurred, we can then reboot the device. We can now see that our update has completed, so we're going to hit confirm and exit, which will take us back to the main screen and restart the iAiming. So to do this, you just hold the power button down as you would normally to turn it off for 3 seconds. And then once it's off, we'll just turn it straight back on. Now that the iAiming's back on, we just need to turn the Wi-Fi on as we did before. So just go straight into your menu, roll down to the Wi-Fi icon, select it and switch it back to on. Once that's done, you can exit the menu and put the device down. Now that we've got that Wi-Fi back on, we'll connect the phone back up to it. So in this case, we'll go back to our settings and we can see it's actually already connected. But once again, if you don't see that, just select it from the list below. So now we'll go back to our main screen and back into the iAiming app. You can see it's back at the start where we were before, so we're going to go straight back into the scope, back into the firmware update menu, and now we're going to do an ARM firmware update. So select that one. We're now at the point we need to check the version again, so we'll have to disconnect the iAiming to get the device back online. So we'll go back to our main screen, back into settings, and turn the Wi-Fi off. Once the Wi-Fi is off, just go back to your main screen and back into the iAiming app, and we can hit check latest version. We can see once again there's now a new firmware version for us to download, so we're going to go ahead and click download new firmware. With that downloaded, we'll now go back in, turn our Wi-Fi back on in the settings so that we can talk to our iAiming scope. So once again, we can see our scope here and we're connected. So we go back to home, back into iAiming. Now, as I mentioned before, we do need to make sure this is set to maximum zoom before we go ahead with the update. So we'll just pick the scope up now, wind the dial to its maximum setting, and we're good to go. So we'll hit update now. So we can now see that the update for this one is complete. So we'll once again hit confirm and exit and restart the scope. So now that our scope's restarted, we can once again go into our menu, turn the Wi-Fi back on, exit the menu and put the scope down. We'll once again connect back to it. So we'll do this by going into the settings. Hopefully it should connect itself. Once again, just find it in the list if you haven't connected. In this case, we've connected back up. So we're going to go back to our main menu, back into our home screen, and back into iAiming. So we'll select our scope once again, and now you can actually see that the software versions for FPGA and ARM now are showing a value. So this is a good sign. These are both up to date. We're ready to update the software. So we're going to go into firmware update again and hit the soft firmware update. Now to check it, we'll need to disconnect the iAiming once again. So back to the home screen, back into settings, and just turn the Wi-Fi off. Now we can go back to the home screen, back into the iAiming app, and hit check latest version. Once again, we can see there's a new update for this one, so we're going to go ahead and click download new firmware. While this is downloading, we'll once again just get this scope's zoom set to its absolute maximum to ensure we have no issues with the update. We've done that now, so we can go ahead and connect our scope back up, ready to install this update. So back to the home screen, back into settings, turn the Wi-Fi on, ensure our scope's connected, which it is in this case, back to the home screen, back into iAiming, and hit update now. The update has now completed, so we're going to hit confirm and exit and restart the iAiming. Your iAiming scope should now be updated. So from here you should be good to use it, but if you want to check that the update has gone on, you can do this in the app. So in this case we've connected it as we saw before in the video, and we're just going to have a quick look. So we'll click on iAiming, and we can see our version numbers there. In this case we've taken the software to 2.3.1, and that's the latest firmware as of the time of making this video. Now I'll just show one extra thing. If we go into firmware update and go through the process as we had before, you will see when I click check latest version, it'll just have a pop-up come up in a moment saying latest version now. This is what you would see if your scope was already up to date, and if you see that, you can go back using the little arrow up here and check the next software version. So you don't need to disconnect and reconnect your scope, you can just simply check the next one. If they're all up to date, then there's no updating to do. I hope this video has helped you update your device. Don't be afraid to have a go with this. It's a very simple process, and if there are issues, it's very unlikely you can harm the device. If you do encounter issues doing this, don't hesitate to contact NIA or your local dealer. Thank you for watching.